I'm on? Sweet. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Robertson. I've been in and around the video game industry for a long time, and I've always loved roguelikes, but I've never worked on a big one. Some of you may know me from my indie game, Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator. Thank you. Thank you. Sweet. Feels good. Keep it coming. All right, but what I want to talk to you about today is an idea I had so if you're like me, and I know I am, that's the old Mystery Science Theater joke. You get an idea for a game, you rapid prototype, you put together some variables and some code, and then you realize, oh, I have to also spend time building the user interface. Oh, everything got dark. Oh, it's probably my screen. Sorry. And the problem is that you basically budget more time for the user interface, whether you like it or not. And often, that drudgery is something you don't particularly like. And that can actually impact your creativity. You say, oh, I could work on this game, but all that user interface work I got to do, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. So I was thinking about that and mulling it over, and I did some prototyping of this prototyping stuff a week ago, and I'd like to share it with you. So can everybody see the code that's here now, or should I zoom in a bit? Okay. I think I can zoom in here. No. No, maybe without my mouse it's going to be harder but hopefully if you look carefully, this code just shows a player object, and it shows how I'm adding some data to it using a particular syntax. So I'm making some variables that are smart. And as you'll see, what I'm going towards is maybe thinking maybe these variables are smart enough to draw themselves. So putting together a bunch of variables for this player, I've got some limits on those types of things. And then down here, I also built a list of things so I can have an inventory for my character. Here over on my monster, same thing. I've got two basic types of monsters, flesh golem and a plant monster, and they're just different data for the different types. Putting together data. So basically you make an object, and the data you want to see on the screen, you make in a particular way. Now here in my main loop, if my draw, I have my selected unit. And what do? I call draw my data. Just call draw my data, and the only argument is the rectangle that I'm going to put on the screen. So let me fire this up. Now what I'm going to show you here is not for the players, it's for the developer. If it'll load, loady load, thinky think. Hello computer. There it is. So this is just a little intro screen. Now I've got the player and the two monsters that I showed you earlier. I click on the monster, and now you can see that the user interface is built dynamically no matter what rectangle I give it for the user interface to fit inside. And I'll show you the more complex version of the player data, because the player just has more complex data, including that inventory. And I can get him, I can shuffle it around, try to find, what box works best for that character data. And that's generally it. But remember, this is not for the player. The player, is just going to see your game after it's done. This is for rapid prototyping and hopefully skipping that whole, I've got to write all that user interface code. Because hopefully this code would get you more like 80% of the way there. And that's good enough for prototyping. At the end of the day, you can overload your draw my data function and draw it however you want and make it really pretty. But this is for prototyping. Notice also that using my arrow keys, I can move my little player object around, but it's pretty slow. With this user interface, I can also integrate a drag bar, go ahead and speed him up so that I can quickly and easily pick certain what number is best for me now from a rapid prototyping point of view. So that's all. I just wanted to share this work that I had done in terms of this idea of getting smart variables to display themselves as a way to really tighten up the initial prototyping loop for some of my games. I thought I didn't want to keep the idea to myself. And that's about all I got to show you. Are we doing questions?
No,
okay.
we don't have time.
Too fast. All right.
Yeah, sorry, lightning. Cool. Now we have Jim, who's going to talk more about, I forgot the name already, but you know the name.
Cool. All right. I make video games for a living because I love doing it, and I'm pretty good at it, and I want to make people laugh and have a good time and have fun. I also want to help people, and I'm really also bad at making games because I'm broke almost all the time, right? I sell games on Steam. What the hell does that do? And I have this near infinite pile of Steam keys that I want to do something cool with, and I want to turn them into food for people besides me, right? And I couldn't do it, and I couldn't do it, and then I realized, wait a minute, other people can do it. They can turn their money into food and get one of my keys, and then now somebody hungry is less hungry because of Dungeon Mans. Well, that rules. Who else can I rope into this? And so last year I did something called Stop the Hunger Clock, which is a charity of sorts where people give me keys, and then real people in the world go out to their real communities. And the easiest way to do it is buy one of those $10 bags of food at your grocery store, right? They all pile up like consumables and around Thanksgiving, and you buy one and it's for hunger relief, and they tell you how much good it's going to do. It's probably true. So you buy that, and then you take a picture of the receipt, you mail it in to me, and you get your choice of keys, right? Because there's a whole bunch of generous developers like you and the camera, who brought keys and delivered them and said, hey, you know what? I got 10 keys. If I can turn that into a whole bunch of food for people, cool, do it. I had people who aren't developers, who are just players, who said, I have a bunch of Steam keys for games I'll never play. You want them? And I would give those away at random to people who pitched in and delivered something. So the way it works is human beings in their real world, real communities, go out, buy one of these things, take a picture of the receipt, send it in, they get a key. It is not push-button receive game on the internet, because I want folks to go out in their community and actually make a difference and help locally. One person last year couldn't find any of those damn brown bags, and he really wanted to partake. So he mailed me afterward and said, I looked and looked, I couldn't find one. So what I did is I went to my local church, and I said, y'all need any help? And they had a food drive, and he ended up working at the food drive for 4 hours and meeting people and cooking things. And holy shit, for a copy of Dungeon Mans? Like, come on. It was awesome. I was very happy. I'm doing it again this year, and it starts next Friday. It's called Stop the Hunger Clock. If you're a dev and you want to support some with keys, do it. If you're a player and you want to get in, do it. If you have anything you can do to help promote this, get the word out, make it cooler so less people are hungry on Thanksgiving, because that's bullshit, and if we can stop it, we should. Let me know. Jim@dungeonmans.com, that's my email address. @DungeonMans, Hunger Clock is the hashtag. It starts in a few days, and that's it. That's all I got. Thanks.
Hey, Kat, if you could put the computer on the screen again. We have Mark, who's going to tell us about a project of his.
So I love procedural generation, and I love distributed systems. So instead of putting them together in a way that it was sensible, I put them together in a way that is very silly. I created a tracery to Ethereum compiler. So you can take your tracery recipe, which spits out a little bit of text, compile that to a blockchain smart contract, and have the world's most expensive way of generating a little piece of text. Not only that, the contract will ensure that it is unique to you, and it will be around forever because there is no way to delete it from the blockchain. So I have not yet paid my $5 to spam the blockchain, but I can show you, assuming the internet is up, the transaction that I did on the test blockchain. Here's the transaction, and this is a very, I should have showed you how expensive it was. The default amount of gas will not get you any text string, but there in the debug output is one of the sample tracery recipes you'll find on Kate Compton's site, preserved in the blockchain for all eternity.
Thank you, that was great. Okay, now we have Kawa.
Hi, I'm Kawa at Kawaii Dragoness on all sorts of places on the internet. I love roguelikes, I love roguelike stories. So here is a roguelike story from a rare fandom fanfic exchange called Yuletide. In 2015, the user Malibda Romantic, I may be mispronouncing that, wrote a fanfic in NetHack called Just Because It Says Read Me Doesn't Mean You Should. My diary, the Oracle. Keep out! If found, return to the Oracle, Oracle level 7-ish, the Dungeons of Doom. 1st January. Dear Diary, I've decided to keep a diary. You're the first to know, of course. Ishchak gave me such a lovely notebook for my birthday that I felt I needed to do something really worthwhile to do with it. And it's New Year, so an excellent time for starting new endeavors. So here we are. I'm writing in you. It will make a change from only ever inventing eternal verities or ambiguous prophecies to be fully understood only as your possessions are identified. Frivolity, here we come. 2nd January. Dear Diary, one of my other presents was a desk calendar from Vlad. Every day there's a new, supposedly witty aphorism. Today's was, an Umber Hulk can be a confusing sight. I must start trying to work these into my routine. So helpful and yet so unhelpful at the same time. Yesterday's was, I smell a maze of twisty little passages. Comedy gold. 3rd January. Dear Diary, today's adventurer was not amused when I told her, if you're lost, try buying a map next time you're in a shop. But she did only pay me 50 Zorkmids. I don't know what she was expecting. I hid behind a fountain until she was gone. 4th January. Dear Diary, cleaned up the fountains today. They were looking a little dreary. Got rid of a load of algae and polished everything up a bit. Can see my face in the caryatids now. Maybe I need a new hobby. Calendar says someone's been spiking the pits. Not a good hobby suggestion. Too vindictive. Apollo knows the adventurers have a hard enough time as it is. 5th January. Dear Diary, not much to do today. Squashed a few grid bugs, nasty scuttling things, and pointed a golden naga in the right direction. The calendar says dilithium crystals are rare indeed, but that's also a terrible suggestion. I don't have the time or money for rare gem collecting. Something more frugal would be better. 6th January. Dear Diary, finally a useful suggestion. They say that Medusa would like to put you on a pedestal. I could learn stone carving. There's no shortage of rocks around here, and I could ask Medusa for tips. Plus, a few extra statues would make the temple look a bit more respectable. I wonder whether Enniscorthy has any books on the subject. I see a trip to Minetown in the future. 7th January. Dear Diary, trekked down to Minetown today to buy supplies. Had to traipse around all the shops in the place before I found what I wanted, but as I done hope had a pickaxe, which he reluctantly let me have, and a couple of scrolls of earth, so the trip wasn't wasted. Inside a shop, you better take a look at the price tags before buying anything. Too true, calendar, too true. Also, dropped in on Ishchak and picked up a few extra candles for lighting my studio. 8th January. Dear Diary, today an adventurer died on my level, unprepared for a baby red dragon. And I wouldn't normally, but I just happened to spot a wand of digging poking out of his pack. Grave robbers sometimes get rich, as the calendar would say. Did just say this morning, coincidentally. Maybe that's where I got the idea from. The statuary plan is a go. 9th January. Dear Diary, quiet day today, so I had my first go at carving. I picked a grid bug, partly inspired by the calendar. They say that a grid bug won't hit you when you cross it. But also they had nice straight lines in a simple shape, perfect for a first attempt. Came out a bit wonky, but overall, quite pleased with it. 10th January. So I tried something else simple today, a floating eye. Not sure how I will get it to float. I'm fresh out of levitation potions, and obviously it can't wear a ring or boots. They say that wiping its face is impossible for a floating eye. Thanks, calendar. 11th January. Dear Diary, felt confident to tackle my first quadruped today. I let the calendar choose, and it said it would be peculiarly sad if your dog turned to stone. My way was much more work than getting hold of a cockatrice egg and a dog would have been, but ultimately a bit of a mess. Considering just giving up and paying gargoyles to fill the alcoves instead, I'm not very good at this. 12th January. Dear Diary, decide to have one last go before giving up. The calendar says they say that dragon scales can be quite enchanting, so I tried a dragon. Bit ambitious, but actually it came out okay. I'm pleasantly surprised. 13th January. Invited Medusa round for tea and to show off my dragon. She was guardedly impressed, I think. She says she prefers a more naturalistic style and likes to capture things as they are. Lucky for some, I guess. They say that in the dungeon you don't usually have any luck at all. She invited me back to her level to see her work. I must take her up on that offer sometime. 14th January. Dear Diary, at a loose end today, no adventures due for a week apparently, so popped down to see Medusa after all. Seriously awed by her work, such a range of subjects and poses. Natural talent, I suppose. Psst, it's all done with mirrors. She had a particularly nice centaur statue that I might have a go at. I think it might go very nicely in the temple. 15th January, Dear Diary. Had decided to give centaurs a go. I think that might strike the right balance between imposing and technically impressive without being too outright monstrous. Have to keep the temple at least slightly welcoming. I wouldn't want adventurers mistake it for Medusa's level and trying to destroy the place. They say that dwarves lawfully mind their own business, but I'm not sure I could trust everyone to be so considerate. 16th January, Dear Diary. Busy carving today. Whew, tiring. Not much effort left for writing. Need to get to sleep. First centaur nearly done. As the calendar helpfully says, they say that some stones are much heavier than others. More prompt. 20th January. Dear Diary, been too busy to write. 3.5 centaurs done so far. The calendar obliquely reminds me that I will need help to get the statues into their places. They say that in lighter moments you could think of ways to pass a stone. Still, that's a problem for another day. More prompt. 25th January. Dear Diary, finally all the centaurs are finished. Got a passing pony to help me put them into place today. They say that no one notices the junk underneath a boulder, and you would not believe how dusty it's been getting around here. I must have a good sweep up. 26th January, Dear Diary. After a giant dinner and a good night's sleep, I'm feeling very pleased with myself. The temple looks lovely. Really pleased that all my hard work paid off. In fact, it's so nice, I'm wondering whether I ought to have some sort of official opening party and invite everyone around to admire it. Spent the day whistling to myself, and when an adventurer came around, I told him, a blindfold can be very useful if you're telepathic, and if that's not actually useful advice, I don't know what is. May he go far. 27th January, Dear Diary. I mentioned my party idea to Rodney, and he thought it was great, so I have preparations well underway. Went down to my town to pick up some fortune cookies and potions of booze, and made myself a nice sign, Temple closed to adventurers, private party. They say that a wand of locking can close more than just doors. I wonder if mine could do an entire level. 28th January, Dear Diary. The big day. I hope people come. They say that the Delphic Oracle knows that lizard corpses aren't confusing, but I certainly don't quite know what to expect from tonight. 29th January, Dear Diary. That went well. Absolutely everyone came, which was good, as I was worried I might have overcatered. Spinach, carrot, and jelly, a meal fit for a nurse. The high priest of Moloch even popped in for a bit. And I know how terribly busy he is. Master Cain was very complimentary about my work, and it's not like he's known for his bright and kindly nature. The Minotaur said he didn't know we had a budding artist in the dungeon, but I'd like to cast my eye over his maze at some point and see if I had any thoughts about livening it up a bit. Crotius took me to one side and offered me quite a lot of Zorkmits for a commission. All in all, a very successful evening. 30th January. Absolutely livid. Some snotty-nosed adventurer came by this afternoon and reduced all of my beautiful statues to smithereens. He said he was looking for spell books. I said, did he want his possessions identified? Because he was going the right way about it. They say that a summoned demon could improve your game, but I think it's highly unlikely to improve his game, unprepared little nobody. Hopefully it'll chase him downstairs first so I won't even have to mop up the floor. 31st January. The calendar had the right idea in the first place. I've ordered 8 statue traps. The next lot of statues will be able to fight back. There is a mastermind deep in the dungeon. Little way they suspect it's me. And next year, I'm asking Vlad for the false rumors calendar. Thanks, everyone.
That was great. Now we have Britta, I think, talking about similar things. For those of you who didn't make the connection, the back of your t-shirts is the Oracle level from NetHack, or is at least supposed to be. So you can think of that wonderful piece of fanfic as you wear that shirt.
This is completely coincidentally also about fan fiction. So, I love fan fiction. I love specifically fan fiction about characters from TV shows and movies and books and other kinds of media, like traditional kinds of fan fiction. You also get stuff about games, but it's less common. And I also love games like NetHack, where you start and similar things happen and you die a lot and you start again, and similar things happen that are a little different each time. And fan fiction has some really interestingly similar aspects that I'm not sure people have ever connected before, other than in my very weird, warped sort of brain over the past couple days. So in a typical fan fiction story, if you haven't read thousands and thousands of them, you take a couple characters who may or may not already have some kind of connection in your favorite show, occasionally characters from completely different shows, and you make up some kind of reason for them to have a new friendship or deepen their friendship, or more commonly have some kind of romantic connection or interaction or relationship or something. Who knows? It really depends. And so at the top of your story, you'll have like, okay, so what kind of friendship are you talking about, or what kind of relationship are you talking about? And also, what kind of, like, there's a certain set of tropes in a lot of fan fiction, especially tropes that your first-time writers are starting with. And a lot of fan fiction is written by a whole lot of different people. And there'll be things like aliens made us do it. Like there was some like external thing that made them have to like have some kind of interaction. There's also things like mirror universe, like put them into like, you know, the evil version of your universe, and something else happens to them. There's also the specific trope of hurt comfort, where like one of them gets hurt, the other one takes care of them, and something develops out of that. There's also really specific tropes for structures. So a very common structure is 5 times X thing happened, and the one time it didn't. So like 5 times, you know, the aliens made us do it, and the one time we were like, oh, let's actually, you know, go on a date just for fun, right? Like, and so what people do is they take these structural elements that are tagged at the top of every story in most sort of fan fiction browsing systems, and then they generate a story out of that, and it's different every time. And I've read hundreds and hundreds of, you know, stories that have those same starting points with the same characters, and it's fun every time. It's a little different every time. And they're often pretty self-contained. They're often like a few thousand words of this one person writing this one story this one time, and that universe that's split off from the main universe doesn't continue. It stops there. And then you read another one and it stops there. So it has this, it reminds me a little bit of playing a sort of procedural-ish game of, you know, here's a new iteration of a bunch of common starting points, and see where you end up. And that makes it really fun. That's all.
This is our last lightning talk with Joe. Let's see if we can do the thing that you want, which is to have this computer be a computer. Yeah, but it's not even. Hold the mic and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joe. I talked yesterday. I'm going to talk real briefly. If we can get the visuals to work. If we can't get the visuals to work, it's going to be audio only from my mouth. But it's not as good. So a lot of people have talked to me about my Star Trek parody Twitter accounts since I got here, which are even less related to roguelikes than the emoji bots that I showed you in my presentation. But they are how I got almost all of the followers for those bots, because I've been working on these parody accounts for many years. I don't know why. I just did. And they also did spawn some procedurally generated bots of their own that I made, literal Markov chain bots, that result in a different quality of comedy.
If we could get the computer on the screen, and then if you want to go to the proper websites. While you do that, we're going to set up some other AV stuff, so ignore us.
Oh. Okay, so I can see, there it is. So going in order of how I made them, which is by not a coincidence, also the order in which they have the most followers. Picard Tips is imagining if Captain Picard of the Starship Enterprise were giving advice mostly about leadership, because that's his forte, but also about various other things. And I just want to read you a few. This is the stuff that I queued up because I was going to be busy this weekend. Picard's civics tip: becoming subservient to an oppressive regime shows profound disrespect to the people being governed. Sometimes I read the news. Picard management tip: if you have a psychic on staff, think unsexy thoughts. Picard management tip: you're not supposed to come up with all the ideas yourself. Ask for suggestions. These are not quotes. These are things that he does that I observed apply today just as much as they do in the future. There was that talk we saw about how to be a CEO and leadership books, and I'm sure in your research you saw not only Shakespeare, but Captain Picard is one of the popular choices people have for learning leadership from fictional characters. So I also, Patrick Stewart follows Picard tips, which is quite an honor. And he also follows Riker tips, which I pretty much didn't do as much with, but I did think of a Riker tip one day, which when I was on the VPN for my work, but I was also doing something on the internet that I shouldn't have been letting my work know about, and I realized you shouldn't do those two things at the same time because they're logging it all. So I tweeted from Riker tips: don't log off the work VPN before you search for something embarrassing on Google. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's an interesting question. What would Riker Google? And these are just some recent, the most recent things. How to impeach a Federation judge, sex clams. These are not always safe for work because it's a Google search history. Why don't holodeck safeties work in Spelunky? I was here at the time. Door stops for automatic doors. Blueprints to build an actual Millennium Falcon. Can nightmares come true? Are the Borg always clothed or always naked? How to draw a turtle. Beverly Crusher tap dance YouTube. These come from a variety of sources of just whatever goes through my head. And let's see, from there, I had Worf tips, but I don't think Worf gives very good advice. I ended up preferring the format of Worf email because Worf is a very impolite person, and he speaks in succinct phrases that fit on Twitter in the form of an email, such as, Captain, while you were away, the Enterprise computer has become infected with ransomware. Recommend evacuation and self-destruct. Worf. Commander, does the captain's behavior this morning seem strange to you? Worf. All crew, again, please do not insert unknown USB drives from random planets into computer ports on the Enterprise. Worf. Thank you for subscribing to the Enterprise Security Newsletter. There have been 580 security breaches this week, all dealt with. Worf. And then the significantly darker and more emotionally draining, I'm squinting to see the screen that I can see up there. Real Ducat. This is the fictional universe that started with Riker Googling, live tweeting the debates from 2015, which was a huge success and created its whole fanfic universe in which Catherine Janeway was running against Gul Dukat for president of the Federation. And to everyone's horror and surprise, Gul Dukat won. And these are absolutely not written by me. These are written by our current president with a couple of words changed. And they're always appropriate, except when money exists, because money doesn't exist in Star Trek. Am I out of time? Okay, that's it. Thanks.